Welcome to a special WTCH presentation, State Assembly Race 2018. You decide. The views and opinions expressed on this program today are those of the host and those appearing on the show. They do not necessarily reflect the view and opinions of WTCH Radio. WTCH makes no representation of the accuracy, completeness, or validity of any information on this program. After this presentation, WTCH will make copies available at our website, tchdailynews.com. Enjoy this special programming, State Assembly Race 2018, You Decide, from WTCH Radio.
Good morning, I'm Doug Rogers on WTCH. Welcome to our special programming today, Election 2018, You Decide. Our studio guests this morning include Gary Tauchen, producer Kayla McKenzie, videographer John Kupski, and Chuck Dallas, who will be presenting our candidates with questions.
Thank you, Doug. Today we're visiting with incumbent Gary Tauchen. You'll have 25 minutes, Gary, to answer our main topical questions in the categories of health insurance, education, business, employment and agriculture, drugs, the environment, and roadways. We will allow for 95 seconds per question. After the last question, you'll be informed on whether or not you have additional time to revisit any of your answers. We'll then open the floor to anything else you'd like to add on your campaign, and you'll also have 4 minutes to talk about your campaign and 1 minute to close. So let me read a quick biography on Gary Tauchen. Gary Tauchen is a graduate of Bondwell High School in UW River Falls. He's a co-owner of a family-owned dairy farm near Bondwell. Gary is a member of the Shawano Area Chamber of Commerce, Shawano Rotary, Wisconsin Farm Bureau, Dairy Business Association, American Dairy Coalition, the Wisconsin Civil Air Patrol, and is part of the Republican Party for Shawano, Brown, Outagamie, and Wapaka counties. He also serves on the Shawano County's Emergency Management Committee, CHAT, which stands for Community Health Action Team, and is a board member for the Rural Health Initiative. Prior to representing us in the Wisconsin State Assembly, Gary was very involved in helping develop organizations that help transform the agricultural industry. He's a founding board member of the Professional Dairy Producers of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Livestock Identification Consortium, and Cooperative Resources International. From 1999 through 2003, he served as an advisor to the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture and the World Trade Negotiators under 2 administrations. In 2006, Gary was elected to serve as this area's representative in the Wisconsin State Assembly. The 6th District includes most of Shawano County and parts of Outagamie, Wapaka, and Brown counties. Gary Tauchen serves on several legislative committees, chairman of the Small Business Development Committee, vice chair of State Affairs, Agriculture, Energy and Utilities, Family Law, International Affairs and Commerce, and the Tourism Committee. So welcome, Gary.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll start out. Our first topics will be on health insurance, Gary. And first question is, how do we approach health insurance affordability for Wisconsin residents who are small business owners or farmers and cannot get health insurance premium assistance through an employer?
Good question. I think first we'll talk about where we are. And as I said earlier, if people feel good, life is good. But if you're not and you're not healthy, life isn't a lot of fun. And in the state of Wisconsin, we're number 1 in healthcare quality. We're in the top 4 for critical access hospitals, which we have here with the Theta Care facility. And we're number 12 in affordability. So we have we want to keep improving, and we have some things we can do and have done that affect affordability in the state of Wisconsin. Last year, we had a 44% increase in premiums across the state. This year, the governor and the legislature passed legislation to create a health care stability plan. And we got variance in July from the federal government. So what that plan will do is it's a reinsurance plan. It'll cover 50% of the cost for individuals up to $200 million. So it'll be between $50,000 and $250,000 they'll be able to, for each individual case, get some compensation for. So that's going to make a huge difference, the healthcare stability plan. The other thing that happened with that is Molina, a company that provided healthcare services in the state of Wisconsin, left because of the Affordable Care Act requirements, and they came back.
Okay.
So we have more competition in the marketplace, and people will have more options in affordable care.
Okay, good. Maybe somewhat along that line there, how can we further build upon the idea and the rule of buying groups for health insurance? Meaning similar businesses buying groups together, buying insurance together with the goal of lowering the premiums. If this doesn't prove successful, then how can a small business owner provide affordable insurance to their employees?
It's a really tough issue and a tough question, and I'm a free market guy, and I like the consumer-driven programs. We had prior to the Affordable Care Act going into effect, we had Badger Care Plus here in the state of Wisconsin, and we had HRSP, which was the high-risk population that had the ability to get insurance but had to pay more. The idea is to try to balance the risk. So if you're going to have groups, you have to have groups of healthy people and people who have high risk or have problems in order to be able to balance it, because there has to be some profit in it for the companies. Otherwise, they won't be able to offer any insurance. So in the Rural Health Initiative, which I am involved with, we did a pilot for a health insurance company that was starting in Madison, Wisconsin, and we were hired to do healthcare assessments across the state, and we found the same thing here in the three counties we represent, Waupaca, Shawano, and Outagamie counties, that 58% of people have problems. They're either close to a stroke or a heart attack or have diabetes they don't know about. So 58% of people have problems, and what we need to do is get out in front of the problem. Wellness and prevention on the front end. Identify the problem, get the resources they need to be able to keep costs down and not go to a crisis situation where they end up in the emergency room.
Sure, yep. What approach can we take with insurers and hospitals to move towards affordable health care, Gary?
Yeah, that's okay. So most of the change that's happened in the world has happened in the last 100 years. We had electricity in 1879, but it took till 1920 to get our cities lit. And most of the health care that has happened in the last 50 years. We have, I think we can remember when the first heart transplant took effect in South Africa. Dr. Bernard was the first person to do that. Senator Rob Cole's mother lived 24 years with a heart transplant.
Wow.
And now we have hip replacements and people with bad valves that can get fixed. So by golly gee, it takes, when you have that kind of technology, it's going to be more expensive. It's not the same kind of health care as we had when you and I were growing up.
Right.
Thank God we live now in the United States of America, in the state of Wisconsin, where we have #1 quality care in the country. And it is affordable comparatively, but I'm sure we can do more, and we'll work on it. Foxconn, for instance, came into the state, and they've developed a relationship with Aurora Health, and they're looking at all the things that, collecting data on all the things that affect healthcare, diet, nutrition, medications, and all those things, so that they can come up with answers that will improve our health over time.
Okay, good. Next question is, how do we find affordable health care for those with pre-existing conditions?
Well, we had the HRSP program that that provided health care, but as I said, the companies are are interested in making a buck, and so if you're not going to include people that don't have problems, it's going to be a challenge. But that being said, in the Assembly, we passed legislation at the end of session that would prevent insurance companies for charging for or not including pre-existing conditions.
Okay.
The governor is supportive of it, so I'm expecting early this session that we will pass something that will provide stability for pre-existing conditions.
Good, good. Last question under health insurance and health care. Can you talk on the cost of prescription drugs? Are all pharmacies obligated to disclose to their clients if there's a cheaper or generic option?
Well, this just came out this past week, so I'm going to talk about it, but I haven't really had time to look into it. But a lot of people assume that generics, if they use insurance, generics are cheaper drugs, and they get the best price, but that isn't always the case. There's a middleman involved with the pharmacies, from the drug companies, a middleman, and then the pharmacies. And it's called a pharmacy benefit manager, and they determine what patients pay. And the pharmacies have no control over copays, and sometimes you pay more using your insurance because of what they call a copay clawback.
Okay.
So there's three PPMs that control 80% of the prescription drug market, and they sometimes have a gag order that they can't talk to people about it. But and this needs to change. We need to do something. We don't have anything in the state of Wisconsin to prevent that from happening. But right now, what people can do is ask how much it'll cost if I don't use my insurance. If they ask that question, then the gag rule is not in effect.
Uh-huh.
So the question to ask is how much will it cost if I don't use my insurance? Then the companies can give you your options.
Okay. Okay. Good. Now we're going to switch topics. Gary, we're going to talk a little bit about education. So first question is, currently, what is the greatest need for our schools? Whether that be technology, safety, or curriculum, and how can you support those needs?
So education is the key to the future. It's the door to opportunity for people. And we need to support our teachers, and one of the tools we have is that it's performance-based, so that Act 10 changed things and offered us the opportunity to pay good teachers more. And the other point that should be made is that we need to and have given more flexibility to the school boards, and I expect that that's going to be the key, because really education should be local. You need to work with the businesses that are in the community to provide opportunities for the young people that come up if they're inclined to go into those businesses. And so one of the other things we did too was pass legislation that allowed people with business experience, technical expertise to be able to teach classes if they can't hire somebody with experience in that area. So there's some tools that are available that will be beneficial to local communities.
Good, good. You talked about teachers. The next question deals a little bit with that. And how can you support our area educators and teachers using programs and or incentives?
Well, one of the things that we just recently passed, the governor, because we had a surplus, was able to give child tax credits of $100 for each child that was in the school system, so that people with children could be able to get some support.
Right.
We also had a 3-day sales tax credit for school supplies. So those two tools had a tremendous impact. They didn't quite get to 100 million, but darn close. That was pretty impressive. We also provided the Department of Justice with $100 million, recognizing that school safety needed to be a priority. A lot of schools already had programs in place, but they utilized, and local schools and the local police department worked with the Department of Justice to implement programs, and they utilized $60 million in providing safety to the schools that didn't have it in place already. The other $40 million is used on mental health because that's a serious problem. It seems like people are under more stress these days, and so they're utilizing that. We increased funding to rural broadband to provide technical expertise in a timely manner. It's something that we have to be globally competitive. And then when it comes to curriculum, we have apprenticeship programs. There's over 15,000 children in the state of Wisconsin that utilize that program. We have civic classes and life skills classes that have really made a difference and continue to.
Okay, good. Last question under education. Of course, those students that graduate from high school and move on to a technical college or to college itself run into loans. So what do you see as a solution on student loan debt, Gary?
Well, the average student loan debt in the state of Wisconsin is $28,000. But if you look at people with real expertise, veterinarians, doctors, lawyers, their debt load can be a couple $100,000. So it kind of depends, but $28,000 is the average. And one of the things that we have done is frozen tuition for the last 6 years. So that has saved students $6,000 over the course of the last 6 years. We also implemented a requirement that people take a financial class so that they learn about balancing budgets and buying a car, buying a house, what it all takes, what it entails, so they have some life skills. And there are organizations like credit unions that have they have facilities right in high schools, and then they train children on how to do a budget, how to balance your checkbook, and then they bring in other expertise on these life skills classes. So we also have colleges and technical colleges that are working closely with the high schools, and they're providing low-cost classes that they're able to take credits prior to going into tech school or colleges, so that helps hold down costs.
You bet. Yep. Okay. We'll move on. Our next topic is questions on business, employment, and agriculture. So first question, in August there were discussions about Wisconsin wedding barns and alcohol beverage regulations. Is there anything we need to do to refine Wisconsin alcohol laws, or are they working well just the way they are?
Well, the three-tier system is what we have in the state of Wisconsin, where you can either be a producer, a distributor, or a wholesaler or retailer, and you can't be one or the other. We changed the rules just a little bit to allow producers of beer to be microbreweries to be able to sell their own beer on site, but there's a lot of issues that deal with alcohol that need to be corrected. Right now, wineries, and when I first got in the legislature, there were 23. Now there's about 150.
Wow.
And so we need to recognize that they need to change too, and the way the rule is right now, they can only stay open until 9 p.m. and you can't really have a wedding or other events if that's all the longer you're going to stay open. So that time, I think, would be good if it changed. But the three-tier system, I think, was well-meaning. It was prohibition, but I'm a dairy farmer, so I like to think of things in terms of the dairy industry where we try to provide the consumer with whatever they want. So if they want something that's different than we have, we need to provide it, and we need to find a way to do it.
Sure.
And so I'm more of a free market kind of guy. I think we have such an opportunity in the state of Wisconsin. We have all these supper clubs and a lot of bars and wineries and microbreweries and distilleries. Well, let's take advantage of that and expand opportunities for people. And so I think we could use some change. I don't want to blow up the whole system.
Sure.
I want to work with people, and I want them talking together and try to figure out how to do it.
Okay, good. Gary, this kind of hits home in your area a little bit. So many Wisconsin farms and industrial employers rely on immigrant workers. What is your stance on this topic?
Yeah, immigration reform. It's a federal issue. I think it's been dragged on for 30-plus years, and we need to work together. There's a bunch of bills in the Congress right now, and I'm hopeful that at some point, because there's pressure, we're all getting pressure all over the country because the unemployment rate is so low.
Right.
We need workers, but we need skilled workers. And so we need to try to figure out how to best provide those to the employers that are looking for them. There's a lot of immigrant labor that works in agriculture, a lot works in industry, construction, hospitality.
Yep.
And I was up in Door County earlier this year where half the people that, or more than half the people that work at some of the facilities up there are from Europe.
Okay.
And so we have to figure out how to fill the employee gaps that we have. And I'm hopeful that this federal issue gets resolved. And there's not much on the state level we can do about it. But once they pass something, then we'll figure out how to best adapt to it.
Sure. Okay. You mentioned Foxconn before, and Foxconn has been a hot button topic. And Gary, what impact on taxes and economics does Foxconn have on us in the 6th District?
Well, we're pretty lucky in the state of Wisconsin. Our economy's been growing ever since Governor Walker got in. And that's what it takes. We want to hold down taxes for people. We need to have opportunities for people, and we need high-paying jobs. And that's what Foxconn does. It brings a transformation, a huge transformation to the state of Wisconsin. Agriculture is the number one industry at $88 billion. Manufacturing's at $59 billion. Well, I'm thinking that there's a great opportunity here for us to expand that considerably. And they're not, we provide them some opportunities to come here, but we provide them tax credits, so they don't get anything until they provide jobs and finish their facility down in Racine County in Pleasant Prairie. So they've invested a lot over and above with the contract with the state of Wisconsin. They've got facilities now in Green Bay, Eau Claire, Milwaukee, Madison. They're investing $100 million in the engineering school down in Madison to work on STEM technology. They have developed a relationship over at UW Stout. They're working with nanotechnology. And in Aurora Health in Green Bay, they were working with the to develop a healthcare database that provides different ways to improve our health.
Okay. Good. Our next topic is drugs. And on opioids, how do we create a safe separation from those who truly need opioids from a medical standpoint and those who abuse these drugs, Gary?
Well, I mean, this is the biggest issue of our time. As you mentioned, I'm on the chat group, Community Health Action Team, and we identified drugs and alcohol abuse as our number one issue. And that continues to be something we're very, very concerned about. We've passed over 30 different bills. Representative Nygren's daughter had some real problems with drug abuse, and he's taken the lead on developing legislation that would help. And we have notification and moderation and how to look for signs of drug abuse and what kind of treatments we have. So this is a very complex topic, and you have to come at it from a lot of different angles. And then we have to give law enforcement the tools they need to be able to do their job.
Right.
From the standpoint of treatment and trying to get better, there's an organization called the Phoenix that a couple months ago I got briefed on. I had somebody come down from Minneapolis that works on the program up there. It's people that have been through treatment, that have abused drugs, that have a physical, they do rock climbing and hiking and working out with weights and all those kind of things, and they utilize that to support the trying to get better. So there's a lot of things that are going on.
Yep. Okay. Gary, what is your stance on medical marijuana and in what form?
Well, last session we passed legislation that allowed CBD oil, cannabinoid oil, to be utilized and sold by pharmacies. That it can be either ingested or smoked, and if it's smoked, you have to have a pipe that will increase the temperature to like 600 degrees. But I talked to one gentleman that had problems with migraine headaches. He had PTSD he spent some time in Iraq and Afghanistan and had some real problems with headaches. And he said if it was smoked, it would affect him immediately and his headaches would go away.
Wow.
And so I'm very supportive of that. My concern with medical marijuana is I don't want to see people get high, and I don't have I can't do anything until we get the federal government has jurisdiction right now.
Yeah.
And so we had problems in Kashina and Navarino that we had the drug cartel from Mexico and Navarino, and they were growing hemp before we actually passed legislation up in Kashina, industrial hemp. So I think the federal jurisdiction problem has to be resolved before I get involved.
Okay. Well, the next question kind of moves on. What's been happening in other states, happening in Canada. What's your stance, Gary, on legalizing recreational marijuana?
Well, kind of the same thing. I mean, the federal government has jurisdiction until that's resolved. There isn't a lot that I'm willing to do, and I don't see it moving in the legislature until that issue is resolved. I think we're going to learn a lot about some of the problems that other states, Washington and Colorado and Oregon and now Canada, are having, because I'd rather move slow on this issue and make sure we get it right.
Yeah.
I think from a perspective of pain management, we need a tool. We need more tools. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Good. Okay. Next is questions on the environment. So first one, Gary, is how do we keep our groundwater clean, and how large is the threat of contamination?
Well, I'll give you the same answer I gave our speaker. It depends. It depends on where you're located. Every area is different, and the watershed is different. We're a lot different here than the Central Sands. We're a lot different than the Karst area and Southern Door and Kewaunee. And they have different watersheds. And so what I'm going to try to do is pull the pieces together. Agriculture, a lot of times, gets blamed for all the problems. Well, we all have to work together. We have to fix the problem in the watershed, whether it's industry or agriculture or sewage treatment. What they found in Southern Door and Kewaunee County was that half the problem was the sewage systems. And of course, then you have cracked well caps and casings that the water goes into their water system, and that's not good. So we have to utilize best management practices in each area. We have to work together as a community to try to figure out what we can do to help. I mean, it doesn't help the community very much. Everybody wants a beautiful lawn, but if you put too much fertilizer on it, it goes into the lake and it causes more problems. So,
Right.
so we just need to work together.
Sure. Okay. How do we work with businesses to control pollutants in our air and waterways, Gary?
Well, there's regulations that we have in effect both on the federal and state level to limit the amount of pollutants that can go into the air, and those systems, those smokestacks, a lot of times you'll see stuff coming out, but it's just vapor, and so they do a good job right now with the regulations we have, and they seem to tighten them up as new technology comes.
Okay.
We have to have new technology to improve things in some cases, but I just think constant improvement is the direction that we need to go. You're going to make mistakes along the way, but I'd rather try and fail than not have tried at all.
Right. Yep, good point. Next, we'll move on to roadways. Is there anything we can do on the district and the state level when it comes to fixing our Wisconsin roadways and bridges? Are there tourism grants that rural communities would qualify for to fix some of these problem areas?
Well, tourism, I'll hit that first because that's the easiest part of this question. Tourism is the smallest agency we have. They don't have enough money.
Okay.
So tourism grants, they would use that for like walking trails, biking trails, snowmobile trails, but they don't have money for major projects. And so when it comes to transportation, though, that is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and it's going to be at the top of our discussion come this session. We've addressed many of the other problems we have. We've at least started, but transportation is the one that we have to address. The point I want to make, though, is the governor and both houses need to agree in order to be able to move something forward.
Sure.
And from the assembly standpoint, everything is on the table. Hoping, though, because of the growth in our economy, that we don't have to go to another tax to be able to do it. And I think we can get by without more taxes as long as our economy keeps growing. From my perspective, public safety and funding are the two biggest issues. I'd like to have maintenance of the roads that we currently have in place as a priority. And if there's areas like County U where there's a major problem with fatalities, we need to address that situation. So we need to make upgrades, and then we'll have audits for efficiency and savings, and be able to move projects forward if we can find that.
Okay, good. So on the upcoming election, there's discussion on a blue wave movement, Gary. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're really a purple state, and I like to think that we in the state of Wisconsin address things first. In a lot of cases we do with Act 10, with right to work, with many of the economic incentives that we put in place to bring businesses to the state. And I like to think that we're much better off than we were 8 years ago when we had a 9.2 unemployment rate. We had a $3.6 billion budget deficit. Our economy wasn't doing well. And so I think that we live in a conservative district, and we just want to keep moving our state forward. And so I think that, every election is the most important.
Yep.
Because that's where the future is going to be decided. And so I just want to encourage everybody to get out and vote on November 6th.
So, Gary, now you have 2 minutes to talk on your campaign or anything else you feel is relevant.
Well, I ran in the first place because I believe that government policy ought to be common sense. It ought to expand opportunities for people and lead to a better quality of life for all of us. And when I believe in Republican values. I want to see a smaller government, cutting spending and taxes. The free market should work. And I have tremendous experience on all levels. I've done a lot. I've sat on a lot of different boards of directors. I'm on several committees in the legislature. And I'm a business owner. I know what it takes to succeed. And I really have a focus this session on trying to work on the water quality issue, because I think that's the biggest issue of our time. Okay. And in the time I have left in the legislature, I hope to be able to work and focus on that. But job skills and economic development are priorities that we need in the state of Wisconsin, and I just encourage people to vote on November 6th, and please consider me.
Good. Great. So we have 1 minute for any closing comments you'd like to make, Gary.
Well, I think, this is the most important election of our time. The next one always is. And so people need to consider what their values are and decide who best represents them and can best represent them in the legislature. These are important times. I still think the best government is closest to the people. So school boards, town boards, county boards, but you have to work with state and federal government. So we're all working together to try to improve people's lives. That's our goal.
Good. Well, best of luck to you on November 6th, Gary.
Thanks. I appreciate it very much.
We've been talking today with our incumbent, Gary Tauchen, for the Assembly race. Time is up for now. Thanks for listening. Rebroadcast of this event and a video will be made available at tchdailynews.com.